So good evening. Welcome everyone to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Town of Annapolis Royal, March 5th, 2025. It is 6 p.m. and we are going to start the meeting now. I'd like to begin by reading the public notice. We have a number of members of the public here. We're very pleased to see such active participation. We want to welcome you. We also want to remind you that the council meetings are live streamed. So today's meeting is being streamed live on the Town of Annapolis Royal YouTube channel. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the council, you're consenting to having your image, voice, and comments recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the CAO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. So, call the meeting to order. Present, we have Heather Sikowski, Melanie Robinson, Lynn Myers, Adele McDonald, and myself, Sybil Skinner Robertson. We have regrets from Amory Boyer and Sandy Millett Campbell. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, then we'll adopt the agenda. And then does anybody choose to disclose a conflict of interest at this time? Okay. So we'll begin with the approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I did have.
Okay, there being no corrections, then the minutes are approved. So we'll move on now then to the presentation from the Save Our Old Forest group.
Yeah, it's showing up for us.
Slideshow.
Bottom right,
On that slider.
just a little to the left. There. It's handy navigator.
Thank you so much for having us again. Really appreciate it and showing up. So, as you know, we've been to you a couple of times. Once to ask for your support for the kind of basic mission of Save Our Old Forest, which is to help the province get on with its commitment to protect 20% by 2030 and to stop cutting the old forests until they've done that. But we were also back here in May of 2024 to specifically request your support for the Goldsmith Lake and Bealsbrook Wilderness areas. So we're back to you again, and I'll explain why in a moment. So we just talked about the 20%, that's good. I think everybody knows that that's a commitment that was made in 2021 and put into legislation. So some of you may remember this rather alarming slide, but the reason that we feel great urgency about protecting the forests is that so much has already been lost. So this is sort of a sequence from Global Forest Watch, which does this sort of satellite scanning. And those pink areas are areas of forest cover loss in 2020. And that's what happened over the next 10, 11 years.
It's chilling.
So that was actually 2022. It's quite alarming. But what you also might see is that I wish the problem was. Oh yeah, that's a, oh, that disappears on the screen. Never mind. Here and there are little patches that haven't been decimated yet. And in the middle of all of that, we'll get to more focus, but there's a little wishbone-shaped lake called Goldsmith Lake. And around it, an area that hasn't been cut as much. So when we were looking at areas to protect, one of the things we looked at was these kinds of maps and saying, well, where are there still some relatively intact patches? When you look at this map, if you look over to that right-hand side, see that great big intact looking patch? That's the Cloud Lakes Wilderness area. So pretty much the only areas that look really intact are the ones that are already protected. What we're trying to do is make sure that we protect more of that, and also in ways that allow wildlife to have stepping stones and connections. So keeping these areas as intact as possible is incredibly important when you look at what has happened. So there's a little speedy history, which you guys can't see at all. So, but I hate it. I hate it when people read things from the slide, so I'm not gonna do that to you. But for the purposes of why we're here right now, in particular, see that Canada-Nova Scotia nature agreement that was signed? That was the federal government basically trying to help Nova Scotia get a move on. And they ponied up $28.5 million. In return, we're supposed to have 15% protected by the end of March 2026. So basically a year.
Sorry, Nina, did you say 15?
Yeah.
15.
So where we are now, 13.68%. We've made less than 1% progress in the last 3 years. It's a little alarming. And we're talking, these goals are very important. There's a lot of land at stake. To get to 20%, we're talking about protecting over 300,000 hectares. And a lot of that is going to come from Crown land because we really can't afford to buy private land. So by the end of this, if the government fulfills its commitment, over 50% of Crown land or public land will be off limits to harvesting. It's significant, partly because we don't have as much Crown land as some places do. Only about a third of our land is Crown land, but nonetheless, it's a pretty worthwhile target to be working towards. But we're quite alarmed at the complete lack of progress.
Is the money prorated to the percentage or?
No, and in fact, they're already dishing some of it out. They've been releasing some of it out because it's basically to increase capacity and help buy some land. So I'm not sure the federal government's going to have a lot of luck prying it back out of our hands, but it is an agreement.
Okay.
And recently, in Rankin in the legislature actually asked the asked the Minister of Environment, Tim Holman, are you committed to the 20% goal? And he said, yes. And then he raised, are you committed to the Canada-Nova Scotia agreement? And he said, oh, yes, yes, yes. So, yes, 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 at least that's better than, huh?
Yeah. What is it?
Well, but it's better to have the acknowledgement and the recognition.
Absolutely.
Moving fast. So I'm not going to cover in detail a whole lot of the ground we covered before, but essentially, when we're trying to think about which forests to protect, the forests that are the most valuable in terms of supporting a great diversity of life are old forests, and the forests that store the most carbon are old forests, and the forests that also buffer us from climate change in the sense of taking big deluges and holding them are old forests. So it's sort of a no-brainer. And as you saw from that map, we don't have a vast amount left. The figures are wildly discrepant as to how much we have left. So I'm not even going to go there because, but not much. However, so one of the things that came along in that sequence there is about 2 months after the Canada-Nova Scotia Nature Agreement, the province put out the Collaborative Protected Areas Strategy, which, to be truthful, was a nothing burger. It says that it's going to come up with a process for how the Department of Environment, the Department of Natural Resources, and the public are going to work together. But it doesn't actually create that process, and that process has not yet formally been created. However, it does lay out basically the criteria, which are nothing revolutionary. They've been kicking around for a while. They're just sort of rephrased a bit. But essentially, everything about Goldsmith Lake meets those criteria. Like, there's really nothing much there that isn't covered. It's really quite an extraordinary area. it also, even though some of the forest you're looking at there, so this is a view from the north of Goldsmith Lake. Although forest around it has been cut in the time that Bowater owned it, which was 1970 to 2012, that pulp mill, and in the time that Westfall has had its paws on it since then, not very much has been cut compared to everywhere else. So when you look at that, you're actually looking at pretty intact forest. And even if not all of that forest is 100 years old, the older forest is protected by the younger forest that's coming up. If you take it out, you get the wind blasting in, you change all the conditions, everything changes. Goldsmith has turned out to be way more of a gem than we knew. And it's only half an hour's drive out of Bridgetown. So it's really quite, one of the further down that list of criteria is kind of tourism. I'm rarely there without going, wow. Like when I moved to Nova Scotia, I looked and I went, where are the old growth forests? Where can I go visit? And they were all pretty hard to get to.
Mhm.
What's at Goldsmith for people who are willing to put a little bit of effort in, enough to keep the crowd out, but not too much effort, is really remarkable. So that's sort of the outline of Goldsmith. You can see in the little green inset box where it is. It's pretty much 7 kilometers inward from top of the hill. And what we have found over time, I'm not going to go into detail about that map, because I'll come back around to it. When we first started looking there were 2 patches of old growth that had long been recognized on the west side of the lake. But in the time that we've been looking at it and working with the citizen scientists, I kind of wear both hats. We kept finding more and more old growth and reporting it to DNR. And they, to their credit, sent their team in. In fact, we met with their team at some point and identified a bunch of those areas and said, yes, these are indeed old growth, which means they get automatic protection. So we went from having just 2 little spots to really basically, you can see that Goldsmith Lake is pretty much ringed with. There isn't any other old growth forest in that whole area that's shown on that map, other than that one little tiny spot, which.
Just gonna ask. So nothing connects those little pieces, like there's nothing in between those sections?
Well.
Or nothing that we're aware of
We've
currently?
actually, let me go back. We've actually found quite a lot more old growth, both to the west and east, and probably one little patch to the south that would be between, which I've supplied a list of 19 more sites for DNR to investigate. So it sure isn't just around the lake by any stretch. It's just that that's where
Sure, yeah.
we focused, and also then they focused. In terms of getting the area protected, this has been quite important to finally get this on the map, which only happened about 10 days ago. Because the story that DNR has put around is, well, it's all managed forest, so it isn't worth protecting. And we were like, who told you that? Because we spent a lot of time there, and so we realized that if we could get DNR to recognize that no, that's not really the case, maybe that would help to move things along. So it took crazy amount of time. Like they were sitting on some of these areas for 1.5 years. You're looking at the clock.
I'm sorry, I
That's okay.
don't want to cut you off, but
No,
we
no.
do have a convention we have to stick to. And I did a bad job of it 2 meetings ago, so I'm trying to do better.
So might we cut off in 2 minutes?
You can, well, you have 15 minutes, but we usually say 10 minutes for presentation,
Okay.
5 minutes for questions, but we've interrupted you a bit, so go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So anyway, so old growth forest, super rare in Nova Scotia, under 1% of our forests. At this point, we've got over 100 species at risk occurrences around the lake. Yeah, it's kind of, it's extraordinary. So basically what we hear, this is one of the bits of old growth forest that hasn't yet been assessed. What we hear from Environment Quietly is, yes, we recognize, you've made a case for this to be, definitely should be protected. What you need now is political support. Because scientifically, we recognize it. DNR isn't doing anything. They won't do anything until they're pushed to do something by political pressure. So to be really blunt, that's what I'm asking you for.
Mm,
You know, and not just you, we're going to the municipality, we're going to the town of Middleton. And we're gonna go meet with ATVers and just do whatever we can to keep putting this pressure on. Because really, you know, that's probably the biggest yellow birch that we found there. That's, wow.
That made me say, wow, because I lived in BC for a long time and I haven't seen trees of this
Yeah.
size.
Yeah, no,
Since.
it's pretty, that's probably 350 years old, that yellow birch.
Wow, that's
And it's in a forest with an average age of 250.
Wow,
It's
great.
just remarkable. So that's actually, that yellow birch is in that patch of hardwoods on the west side. So there's now pretty much like really high quality old growth forest bringing this. So really, that's what we're asking for is write a letter and say, hey, we as the town would really appreciate this being protected. And ideally to the premier, with the CC to Minister Holman, or if you'd rather write it to the Minister of the Environment, either way, whatever we can do to get this area protected. It's not huge. It's about 3,900, 3,800 hectares. So it won't light up their whole budget. But we really want to get it in there in the 15% target because DNR is continuing to approve harvesting plans in there. So just trying to keep it in the condition it is now is a pretty major occupation for us. So, thanks.
Was it over 25% being earmarked for high production forest?
Yeah, I don't know, that's a longer term thing, the immediate stuff are the harvest plans, but yes, they have identified 25% as possible for clear cutting.
okay. Any last questions?
I was gonna ask a question, you might have said it and I missed it, but what's official old growth compared to old growth? Official and then old growth?
Right,
Is that-
so the official is what DNR has actually done their assessments on,
Okay.
which essentially I had to submit multiple FOIPOPs, Freedom of Information requests to get this information. And finally, it was that, you know, writing and say, well, I know you've assessed this one and this one and this one, and when are you gonna put it on the map?
Wow.
So that's the official, and the unofficial is basically areas that we've gone to, and sometimes like the guy who's done some of the assessing has come and looked at them and said, yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
But they haven't gone through that official
Process,
process.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question. Do you have a draft letter for us or you just want us to draft it ourselves?
Would you like us to write you a draft letter?
That's
Probably
always
be
helpful,
good,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure we could do
Yeah,
that.
that's what you'd like us
Cause you
to
can make sure
say.
that all the points you want covered are there.
Right. Yeah, we could. Any other?
That way we don't miss any of the most salient points that need to be made.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for spending some time with us. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you all for your dedication to this really
Yes.
important topic. It's sincerely appreciated.
I'll follow you all on Facebook and live through you vicariously. So I'm really thankful that you came this evening. I appreciate it.
For kayakers, it's an amazing place to kayak and canoe.
Yes.
I might be able to get in a kayak, but getting out would be the whole other story.
You do it in the water, you just roll it.
Just roll over.
Works fine.
I'm a kayaker and we were gonna go last summer to the, we had like a little fundraising, but I can't remember what happened that weekend. We didn't get there, but we will make it eventually. So,
So it's easy to get in and out by car and like.
Yes.
All of the kayak.
Not in the winter.
Kayak in the winter.
A little bit. I would
Yeah.
say you want more than a fit level clearance to get far in. To get into the first bit of old road, you can do with the low clearance. To get into the lake, you might
My
want.
hybrid SUV might make it in.
great. Thank you very much. So is there any other public input?
I wanted to ask, Nina, how many volunteer hours do you think have gone into this? I am just astounded at the hours that people put in. And it's not just us, there's a larger, much larger group of volunteers that are helping to save these forests.
I just barely can even wrap my mind around
Yeah.
probably every one of those 100 species at risk represents an hour. Like, a couple of people in the woods hunting, sometimes they're home, slews of days where we don't find anything.
Yeah. But the days you've slept, overnight in the camp, like, it's absolutely unbelievable, the dedication that people are giving. I just wanted to recognize the volunteer hours
Absolutely.
and dedication that's gone into it.
Hundreds if not thousands or hundreds.
I think so.
40?
I'd say easily thousands
Wow.
when you start talking about all the different people.
Yeah, the soup Sundays. and-
Exactly, yeah. It adds up.
The music festival and, oh my gosh. It's a good thing, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, and all the people who are not present. We appreciate the dedication and hours and real important contribution that you make to your community this way.
Thank you.
Are there other topics from the public that anyone wants to bring up? Okay, we will move on to unfinished business then. First piece of unfinished business is the meet and greet. I guess just to have a discussion about how
Yeah,
to do it and when.
yeah, so Sandy said that it's $75 if you want to have it at the Legion, or you can have it here. But Monday nights, it's usually, the Legion is usually free, there's no one there. There is $1,000 in the budget, the upcoming budget for your public meetings,
Okay,
so you just pick a date, and so the Legion would be favorable. Well, on Monday nights, there's no one there, so you would have it to yourself, that's what she
You
said.
gotta do whatever you
Yeah.
want.
unlike the medical meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a great, I mean, it is a great space.
It's a nice venue.
And they've got all of
we
the-
can have people that, and
Yeah.
space there, it also takes away that
There's
sort of
audio,
formality of the
there's-
setting, so people feel so comfortable.
Mhm.
It's accessible.
yeah.
Now, I'm gonna ask the question that may seem like the foolish question, but when we're talking about meet and greet, we haven't actually set a topic for this.
No, not yet. This is the first discussion we've had about it since saying we wanted to do it. So I think, we need to consider different topics or whether we just do what we did in the past, which is allowing people to go on and talk to people individually. I don't know what.
Which did generate a lot of
lot of
topics, which was
discussion,
good.
yeah.
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 So I think for our first one, that would be good to keep it open and just listen to what the public have to say, any questions that they have.
When, is there a, time that people have discussed or preference? So it's just whenever we would like to set
I
it
think
up.
so.
Anything from council?
Evening tonight?
I mean, if Monday evenings are when the Legion is accessible. I cannot say that word for some reason today, accessible. Mondays are generally, I mean, once we're past the budget period.
Yeah, I was thinking more, not the day, but my preference would be that we push it into April just because.
Oh, I see what you're saying, sorry. Good,
Yeah.
but yes, I would prefer that as well, I
Yeah.
agree, sorry, I misunderstood what you were asking.
So if we can, find a,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was gonna suggest a date. The 28th, which takes us after the long weekend of Easter, because that Monday wouldn't be.
Well, that's our regional council, or the one where all the councils come together.
Oh, yes, that's our.
And we're hosting it.
Yeah.
We're hosting it, so we can't not be there.
The 21st is also. That's Easter and Monday, so.
And I will just say that, the 7th of April, well, it would work, we just have PHIC at 4, but that's not.
My preference would be for 1 week later if possible, just
The
if I have a personal commitment that cause me to need to be out of.
I have nothing on the 14th. It's wide open if you guys wanna fill it.
Could we potentially do an earlier time?
Earlier in the evening, you mean?
Yeah.
Earlier than, what time would you like? What time?
4
works for you?
4 o'clock, would that be too early?
4:15?
Okay, great.
April 14th, 4:30.
At the Legion,
Meet.
and put it in various announcements and encourage people to attend. I think
Yeah,
they
and
were
that-
very effective.
Do we do 2 hours for that? Is that the time frame for that?
I think that worked well last time.
Looks like it goes.
Yes, it does. Faster than I thought it would. But you know, like, I mean, just there were so many conversations.
So we'll see if the Legion's available that
Yeah.
day.
And if the Legion isn't available, we have sort of got backup options, like we could do something at the hub maybe, or
This room.
or this room, yeah. Yeah, which we did have one year, that was okay
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Done with my motions. The few guys are ones. All right, so are we comfortable with that topic? Shall we move on then? Okay,
And we don't need a motion for that though, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the next topic is request for decision, repeal and replace the policy on meetings, procedures and presentations.
So the highlighted sections are the changes there, and then there is, there's an appendix, just the conflict of interest issue.
Okay, any comments? Yes. Can we entertain a motion then?
I move to recommend to council to repeal the policy on meetings, procedures and presentations, number 2023-06, and replace the meetings, procedure and presentation policy number 2025-05, dated March 2025.
I'll second that motion.
Right. Do we wish to have any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Unanimously carried then. Okay. The next one, piece of unfinished business relates to the community solar program.
And that's just a discussion on the presentation that you would have seen.
Okay.
Want to discuss that?
I mean, I found it very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does seem like it requires quite a bit of work if we're doing sort of a larger piece and a lot of money up front before something like that's approved. But I certainly would be interested in exploring some of the other options for. Anyway, I'd be interested in exploring.
I wondered if there was opportunity for partnership with our area municipalities. Again, just we have such finite land. And so I wondered if we ever decided we were interested in doing something like that, whether or not there's an opportunity to share in something like that with, say, the county in a nearby, you know, so it made sense that it was close by to us, that we'd be able to access it or.
Have you all been out to see the solar panels, the new solar panels at our sewage treatment?
I haven't seen those ones. I have seen the aerials of the ones at the library. Yeah.
I listened to the presentation and I wrote to presenter and had some of my questions answered, and it seems like it's going to be something that maybe we should be looking at in a year, just because of staffing,
Yeah,
because it is going to take
Yeah.
a ton of time. And each of the processes could change our minds at any point, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've got so many big projects and heavy, like
Yeah.
staff intensive things that are coming through in the next 2 years, so.
but definitely worth taking a look at when we have staffing
Yeah,
to support
keep
it.
it on the radar.
Yeah.
After he opens up.
I'm supposed to wait till everybody else has finished commenting. Is everybody have their say? I think one of the things we talked about also is not just whether the town would consider this as an option for the town, but how do we help some of the people around the town who might benefit from the program to be aware of it and consider it as an option for them. So that might be the shorter term action that we can take.
I wonder if we could host, like, the town itself could offer as a host of an information session or something for the community. I don't mean the town providing the information, but are making arrangements, bringing people like that in. If the community was interested in having more detailed information.
Or perhaps we could invite them to set a booth up at the meet and greet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of.
That's a really
thing,
good
yeah.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Way, because again, being very conscious of the amount of
Yeah, but just some way to
projects the
connect
staff
the
has,
two.
but then it
Yeah.
would, people who came would see it and be able to talk to the people and take advantage.
Yeah, and that doesn't require extra staff time on top of anything that's
Mhm.
already,
Or one of the
Okay.
environmental, when we just had the conference back in,
yeah,
Yeah.
there'll be a new
October?
fair this
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
so
so
maybe
that
that's
might
the
be
place
another
to
option.
do it, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be, or at both, either or both and.
Yeah.
Anything else on that topic? All right, we'll move on to new business then. The first being nominations for the Order of Nova Scotia, which is tab 4.
Yeah, and you have until the 18th if you decide on a leader in your community,
18th of April.
or, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
18.
and is that something that we need to like unanimously decide on?
I
Or,
would think so.
okay,
So I've been involved with, 4 nomination packages that have come out of this community. 3 that have come out from the community privately, and 1 that came out from like 2 administrations ago, 2, when Bill was here.
Yeah.
And I think he was involved with a couple at that time as well.
Mhm.
So there's a number of different ways to tackle it if we were interested. There's the means of us putting somebody forward, or there's the means of putting the information out. So sharing this information to the community and saying, this opportunity is open right now. And, you may have someone in the community that you want to support. And then our role would then be potentially writing a letter of support for
Right.
someone else's application. We don't necessarily have to do the application ourselves. They're not like onerous, but it's a fair bit of work. There's a fair bit of legwork to put a package together.
Yeah.
It's
So
quite a few
if we
different
could
pieces.
include some information in the town crier and on the
Mhm.
town
Yeah.
website or something, so that people are aware and everybody else can talk it out if we're out in the committee.
The town crier, don't think. the
We may
It
April
will go out
edition.
again.
There will be an April edition.
Yes, it'll go out on last day of March.
Okay,
So that, given what I know about what it takes for the
Yeah.
package, that would still leave people enough time to put a package together.
but that wouldn't be, that it would be past the deadline.
no,
No,
April
it really
18th,
it's not
going out.
March.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's at the end of April, end of March.
End of March, yeah.
And state.
Okay. Anything else on that topic? All right, so the next topic is to appoint new committee members for the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Right, so our policy right now, you can only have 3, not 4, but you've had 4 applications. And it's my understanding that you'd like to have all 4 on the committee. If you do, you can appoint 3 now. And the policy can be changed at the April Committee of the Whole, and you can then add the 4th person, or you can choose.
So
wanted to give
I
you your
spoke with
options.
Sandy about this
Yeah.
very subject, and that might be why the notes came up about potentially adding the number. Because most of our committees, we have a set number, it says in the policy, this is how many people get to be on the committee. But the point Sandy had made to me, and I couldn't agree with more, was that if you have X number of people interested in being on a committee of the town, we shouldn't be turning anybody away, because it's usually a heavy volunteer commitment. And so, granted, we don't want 20 people on the committee, but we might want to give the committees a bit of flex room. So if the number is 3, then we might want to say, a minimum of 3, a maximum of whatever number we're comfortable with, so that there's a little bit of breathing space. And that might also allow volunteers to rotate through the committee, so that you don't have people all leading at the same time, that you have someone for a year and then other people would overlap.
Going on.
Yeah,
So it's your choice.
I agree. I think that the more people that are interested and willing to get involved, the better. So I would certainly support nominating nominating 3 people and then maybe revisiting the
For committee of the whole for next month?
This month?
The committee of the whole for
Okay,
next month,
yes,
this is
yes.
committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to change the policy next month. and
Yeah.
then-
Yeah. Certainly.
Ready to,
Do we have, sorry, just
Yeah.
the question I would ask though is, so we still, if that's what we do, we would still have to pick 3 out of the 4 that we have now, and one of the 4th would then have to be held over to the next, to that next session when we update the policy. So how do we handle that? Do we want to choose one of the 3 out of the 4, or do we push that, turn that, like, we have to pick them because they have to go through on the motion? So we have to have some names to put in there into that spot. Do we have any, is there, like, does anybody have a list? I mean, I looked at it and thought we should choose all 4, but does anybody have a list of 3 that,
I do.
okay?
Jillian Kerr, Lachlan Donald, and Geraldine Kenny, sorry.
That's actually the same list I had, so I'll just, so that was the same one I had.
And then you could add Maria or Mariah,
Mariah.
in April, if that's how you choose to go forward. That way you could have everyone on the committee.
Is that? Do you want me to make the motion to that effect, or or,
If that's what.
I guess we have to do them each individually based on the way that it's.
yeah. Well, I'll start and then we can just go around the way we usually do if we want to do that. Sorry, where am I? I recommend, I move to recommend to council to appoint Jillian Kerr to the Environment Advisory Committee for a term of 1 year until December 31st, 2025.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion needed? All in favor? Carried unanimously.
I move to recommend Lachlan McDonald. I recommend to council to appoint Lachlan McDonald to the Environmental Advisory Committee for a term of 1 year until December 31st, 2025.
I'll second that.
Any discussion required? All in favor? Unanimously carried.
I move to recommend to council to appoint Geraldine Kenny to the Environmental Advisory Committee for a term of 2 years until December 31st, 2026.
Seconder.
Oh, sorry, I second that. I was writing.
Any discussion required? Okay, all in favor? Oh,
I just heard 2026, but someone else said
It's
2025.
the reason why that is, it's staggered, because the 2 year, they want everything to be staggered when people
Okay.
renew.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have.
No,
motion
good
in front of me.
question, because I got that too.
all in favor?
I,
Good. Do we need to make a motion then about recommending to council to update the?
You can.
okay.
Okay.
I can move that. I
It's
move,
not needed.
oh, is it?
No, because you're gonna be. reviewing the
Oh, that's
policy.
right. The policy will come as a motion at the next
Next
committee
month,
of the
that's
whole.
right, yeah.
But we just giving direction.
Yeah.
That's all we have to do.
All right.
I think the direction is here.
Good.
Use equipment.
So the capital equipment replacement policy, that is just, we're changing it around, so there's appendix A, B, and C, so that we don't have to change the policy every time we change.
You can just change the
Yeah,
appendices.
That's
Oh, that
the
makes
only
great
reason we're
sense.
doing that, yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
totally
all
makes
that
sense.
is.
Okay. So can I have a motion, please? Sure.
I move to recommend to council to repeal the equipment replacement policy number 2016-03 and replace with the equipment replacement policy number 2025-06 dated March 2025.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion required at this point? Nope. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously carried. And so our next topic is the Joint Climate Action Survey.
Actually, there's one just before
Oh,
that,
did I
the
miss that?
repeal accessibility
Okay.
policy. And you no longer need your accessibility policy because the idea policy takes the place of the accessibility.
Supersedes it.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion to recommend to council to repeal Accessibility Advisory Committee Policy number 2019-06 dated December 16th, 2019, as of March 20th, 2025.
Second that.
March 5th.
It'll be confirmed at the council
Yeah.
meeting.
Any discussion required? All in favor? Unanimously carried. Okay, now we can move on to the Joint Climate Action Survey.
And that's really just in here for information purposes, so that the public's aware of this survey and to fill it out.
Yeah, it takes about 5 minutes. I've done it.
Yeah,
I did it
Tried
too.
to get
Very
people
easy.
to make a commitment that
Yeah,
to fill it out yourself and get 5 more people to fill it out, because we did see some demographics, and it's primarily those of us who are of an elderly persuasion. And perhaps certain demographics, so it might be good to get a lot
Yeah.
more feedback from people of different demographics and different points of view. But it's a critical thing to gather feedback on, because this will be an important thing that we need to deal with.
Is there a deadline for that?
Yes, but I don't remember what it is. You can find it if you go on the town website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a QR code, you point your phone at it, and it'll take you to the site where the survey is, and I think
Can we
it's
put
a
the QR
while.
code at our meet and greet?
Yes, we
On
should
the
do,
wall?
if
Yeah.
If
the
it's
time
still
is
open,
yeah,
yeah,
good
if
idea.
it's still
It's
open,
still
we certainly
going.
could, yeah.
Yeah, if it's still live.
Yeah.
I was just looking to see, it doesn't say
No,
anywhere in that.
no,
No,
I
it
don't
doesn't,
see.
Yeah.
so.
I did see it too, I saw
Yeah,
a date,
somewhere,
it
but
seems like it's a
fairly
ways out,
extended.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not, I seem to think it was June.
Yeah, and because they were talking about going around to various community groups to encourage them
Yeah.
also, so I think
So
we have.
that's a good idea, and we could actually
Yeah.
definitely add.
Yeah, it'd be great to have some students
QR
fill it
codes
out,
all around,
Yeah,
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 you know, so.
or right next to the sign in and everywhere.
Yeah.
I
Good
could,
idea.
actually, you just said it'd be great to have students fill it out, I could make sure that it gets sent to Heather Hiscock and see if she can incorporate it into the O2 class at the high school.
Yeah, that would be good. All right, anything else on that topic then? Okay, so the Save Our Old Forests request.
right, so they're going to send a draft letter and we'll get that for your review.
Everybody's okay with us supporting that?
Yes, I fully
Any
support that.
questions, concerns? No.
No,
Okay,
they've done
Seem like
excellent
they do a
work.
lot of work,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah,
And she only briefly mentioned it, but the citizen scientist work that is done in conjunction with that, the citizen scientist group is doing stuff kind of all over the place, but it's amazing to me what they accomplished. Like, it's extraordinary. They're
okay,
filling a huge gap.
great. All right, we don't seem to have any respondents? No, okay, so can I have a motion to go into camera?
I'll move.
Also, and motion to take us out.
It always seems to be Heather and I, so we take turns.
Thank you very much, the members of the public, we very much appreciate you
Thank
coming
you
in.
for coming.
And you've all signed the little